Hello and welcome to Internet Culture. I am Mark Tasman. This video deals with chapter 1 from the book, Internet Culture. What is culture? How do we handle culture? How do we pass it on? You'll see culture defined as a set of values or beliefs that can be communicated interpersonally. So the way that we dress, our mannerisms, the way that we wear our hair. But it's also by these artifacts which we create, which includes cinema, photography. Culture could be this cup, cultural artifact, but it's also things that we pass on to future generations, and it's things that we receive from our ancestors, like, for example, a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. In the social sciences, one way to understand or study culture is to look at how ideas spread through culture. And this process is called diffusion. To better understand diffusion, we could look at a couple different models. One of them is a linguistic change model, so looking at how words or expressions move through culture, the way of thinking of language as a virus. So when Borat says, "very nice," or when Stephen Colbert uses the word truthiness, or any other kinds of words that get invented and spread through. That's one way to think about the vector of culture as it moves through.
Totes McGotes, it's cray-cray adorbs.
Another model of diffusion is the ecological model. And we can think about things like invasive species. When you introduce something into an environment that has no natural predators, it's hard to get it out and it takes over. You'll see one example is the emerald ash borer. Can you think of any other examples?
Totes McGotes.
Have you seen the iconic Apple commercial, 1984?
We shall prevail.
You can see these factors of high interdependence and non-reversibility. Listen to what they say.
And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Of course, 1984 is a book written by George Orwell in 1948 that describes a surveillance state run amok. It's basically a techno-totalitarian nightmare. Screens everywhere, and screens that both record and distract us all the time. It sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Apple. 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 Apple I something.
What about all these Apple products that we own and use? Is it non-reversible? Could we sort of go back to a time before we had all of these Apple things? Can you imagine that world before Steve Jobs? Or imagine a world without Steve Jobs' vision? How many Apple products have you owned or possessed in total? These innovations do not always spread by themselves. They are attached to other important social conditions. Take, for example, the QWERTY keyboard. This came from an inventor in Milwaukee named Christopher Scholes, who was trying to keep the letters from jamming together on the arm so that the ribbon could come across and strike cleanly. We still use that QWERTY system today, but we don't have the problem of the keyboard arms jamming. In fact, there have been other systems that have been invented that are more efficient than the QWERTY, like the Dvorak system. But it doesn't catch on. Kalestis Juma says that it is because these things don't just exist in a vacuum. They are part of not just larger emotional environments, but they're actually part of a real economy. There's a whole network of repair shops and a culture that exists around exchanging ideas and information through those particular devices, like the fax machine. And he says when a technology goes extinct, there's also some feeling of empathy that something has been lost that's bigger than just the device itself. It's like a way of life has been lost. He says that people don't fear new technologies, people fear loss.
Perceived attributes.
Everett Rogers first published Diffusions of Innovations in 1962, where he describes these fundamental aspects of the change in communication and technology and acceptance of that change in social systems. And he's come up with several criteria: relative advantage, compatibility, complexity, trialability, observability. These are all factors that we look to when we decide about adopting a new technology or some other kind of new innovation. What is it that you think that device is going to do for you? I mean, essentially, this is our justification when we want to buy something new. We're like, oh, well, my old phone, doesn't have this feature, but the new phone has the, you can drop it in water. You can, it has an underwater scuba diving camera. It has a submarine attachment. How often do you really use those things? Have you seen it work? Will it work reliably? Does your friend have it? Does it mean something else socially when you have that? Does it say something about your position in society? It is essentially the nexus of culture and technology. Rogers also describes and breaks down the innovation decision process, which shows when we become aware of something, how we make that decision, and after we implement that, we look for confirmation. What other value systems or what other values or beliefs that you have that actually influence the way that you adopt or refuse new technology? If you can't think of a belief system, what about some stories that either your parents or grandparents told to you, or stories from the media that you've seen that have influenced how it is that you think about technology? Until next time, I will see you on the internet.